Okay, that's recording. Okay, welcome. Class attendance of these classes is absolutely shockingly weak. Shocking. I know there are students that have got clashes after recess. We will move the classes to Tuesdays at lunchtime, so hopefully it will go a bit better then. I am uploading the recordings on YouTube as explained previously, but now YouTube actually shows me how many people have downloaded and watched the videos. And that is also not comparable to the number of students that are registered for this course. So you're not attending classes, and you're not watching the videos either. So I don't know how you're going to pass. It is really a bit very disappointing, to say the least. Having said that, the quiz one results were average. Not too bad. There were some on the WhatsApp group. There were some complaints about the questions after the quiz. Students complaining, but the answers weren't correct, or there was no correct answer, or it was confusing, or something like that. As I had explained previously, the questions are all taken from the question bank, and they are scrambled. So Mr. Henjala's question 1 and Ms. Shiweva's question 1 is not the same question. If you want feedback on the questions, if there's anything you don't understand, or you don't agree with the answer, or it's confusing, or whatever, you need to give me your name as well as the number of the question in your particular quiz, so that I can find it. I made this offer that I will assist you, but there was a lot of noise and a lot of complaints. Oh, there was no correct answer. Oh, all the answers were correct. They were confusing, blah, 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 blah. And not a single student contacted me when I extended the invitation to assist you. So if you're just going to be sitting on the group and complaining, then obviously we're not going to be getting anywhere. Send me if you're confused about a particular question. Send me your name in private message me. Send me your name and the particular question number, and I will look at it and I will explain to you why the answers were the way they were. It's a learning opportunity, but just complaining isn't going to get you any more marks. Okay, having said that, that's my speech for the day. So we're moving on. What we've done so far is we've looked at the Namibian Constitution, human rights. Then we looked at the Namibian traffic and transportation legislation within the global context, international transport law. Then we started coming back closer to home. We looked at the SADC protocol, an international instrument which binds SADC member states, so regional. Then last week we stepped into Namibia. So that is where we are at the moment. Last week we looked at a number of different pieces of legislation in Namibia that pertain to traffic and transportation law. So what we're doing then as from today is we are now starting to zoom in as from today on the most important piece of legislation, the most important law pertaining to traffic and road traffic and transportation in Namibia, namely the Road Traffic and Transportation Act, Act 22 of 1999. You have to have a copy of this act. You must have it. It is available on e-learning, both the act and the regulations to the act are on e-learning. You need to download the act. There are many places let me just start sharing my slides. Okay, just give me confirmation quickly. Can you see the slides?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Simasiko. Okay, then just protocol again, as in the past, while I'm teaching, I am focusing on my window with the slides, so not on the class. So I will not see you if you raise your hand. What you need to do, and please feel free to do this, to interrupt me if there's anything you don't understand or you have questions or whatever, please interrupt me. You have to speak up. I won't see you if you just raise your hand, but please feel free to speak up, to interrupt me, or alternatively put your questions then in the chat box and I will get back to them. So as I said, we're starting then with the Road Traffic and Transport Act of 1999. You don't need to remember the specific number, the precise number of the act. But you must have a copy of this act. The study guide, the study notes as from here on, are written in the form of a wraparound. The notes are not comprehensive. The notes refer you to specific sections on the act and tell you to go and read that and go and read that. So without that, without actually reading the actual act, I did not copy and paste the act into the study notes. That is unnecessary. The act is also accompanied by regulations. I'm going to talk more about regulations shortly. The act is accompanied by regulations. The act itself is not a very thick document. It's just a couple of pages. The regulations are lengthy. You do not need to download and print the full regulations. That would be costing you unnecessary money. If you do need specific regulations, I will refer you to the precise regulations so that you can download only those pages. Also for the purpose of your face-to-face test as well as your exam, you will need certain of the regulations. I will provide them to you. If there are regulations that you need, I will provide them to you as an annexure to your test in hard copy. But the act you must have. Okay, so our learning objectives there you have all of those. Always remember to get back to your learning objectives. Double check that you have actually met these objectives. So the Road Traffic and Transportation Act as promulgated by the Namibian Parliament in 1999, serves a number of functions, has a number of purposes. The main purposes are listed for you here on the slide. The Road Traffic and Transportation Act establishes the Transportation Commission of Namibia. It is responsible for the regulation of traffic on public roads. It deals with the registration and licensing of drivers and vehicles, as well as with cross-border transportation. So I just want to look at something here. I'm going to jump to the slide. Some reason my slides are a bit not in the right sequence. My apologies for that. I will fix that. So establishes the Transportation Commission, regulates traffic on public roads, registration and licensing of drivers and vehicles, and cross-border transport. We will be touching on all those aspects, some of them in more depth than others. Now, if you remember just a few minutes ago, I spoke about the Act and about the regulations. I told you that there's an Act which you must download and print, and then there are the regulations which are lengthy. It's a bulky document. Now, this raises the question, or it might have raised the question with you, but what are regulations? What is she talking about? Why are there regulations to an Act? Now, not all laws of Parliament have regulations, but some of them, including the Road Traffic and Transportation Act, RTTA, I will, by the way, in the course of lecturing, just refer to the RTTA. You're welcome also in your assessments just to write RTTA. Not all laws have regulations, but the RTTA certainly does. So the question then arises, why? What is the purpose of regulations to an Act? Now, if you think about it, I don't know how much you know, you did Commercial Law 1A, there was a piece in the study guide, but it wasn't for assessment purposes, that described briefly the whole process of making a law. Now, to make a law is a lengthy and extended process. It takes a lot of time. Just to put you in the picture, when NUST wanted to, then the previous Polytechnic of Namibia, when they wanted to change their name from Polytechnic of Namibia to the University of Namibia, a law needed to be passed by Parliament. And even though this law got priority attention, it took about 2 years. So it wasn't even a completely new law. It was just really a changing an existing law to change the name of the institution. And it still took about 2 years to get through Parliament. Making a law is a very lengthy process. So Parliament makes a law, but then sometimes circumstances change. And you need to change the law in order to keep up with changed circumstances. But to change the law takes another 2 years, if not longer. So that could be cumbersome and impractical. And that is why certain acts have regulations. The regulations are not made by Parliament. The regulations are made by the minister. And a minister can only make regulations if the main act, if the act himself authorizes the minister to make regulations. So the minister cannot one day on a Thursday decide, oh, I'm going to make some regulations. He must be authorized in the main act to make regulations. Of course, when I say they are made by the minister, he's the one that finally signs the document, but he's not the one that sits in his office and decides I need to put that in the regulations and I need to put that in the regulations. The minister has his team of advisors. Our ministers are smart enough, clever enough to know how and when to use expert knowledge. So he gets his advisors in and his legal advisors, legal team, technical team, and they draft the regulations. But eventually he signs them. They are then published in the Government Gazette and become effective from the moment of publication. So let's look, let's look at this particular slide. The difference, the comparison between an Act of Parliament and regulations. Act of Parliament must be approved by Parliament, whereas, that's a typo. I need to just fix this quickly. It's not approved by Parliament. Parliament approves the law. The minister approves the regulations. Act of Parliament is superior. So if there's ever a conflict, what is written in the law will prevail. Regulations subordinate to the main act. Act of Parliament amended by Parliament. Regulations amended by the minister. The main act must always be in line with the Namibian Constitution. The regulations must be in line with the act. By necessary implication, that means that the regulations will also be in line with the Constitution. If the Constitution is in line with the act, then obviously, and the regulations are in line with the act, then the regulations are also going to be in line with the Constitution. So the act provides the general framework, the bare bones, whereas the regulations provide the details. Practical example from your field of study. Driving under the influence of alcohol. The Road Traffic and Transportation Act merely states that it is an offense, it is a crime to drive under the influence of alcohol. What the limits are included in the regulations. Getting back to where I started, regulations are easy to change. So the Act contains the main provision. But if, let's say, the minister decides, but there are way too many car crashes and drunken driving in Namibia, and our population is unruly, and I want to make it even stricter, he can do that by changing the regulations instead of having to ask for and take the whole act back as an amendment, which is going to take 2 years. Because if you want to stop drunken driving, you want to stop drunken driving now, not only in 2 years' time. So that's the difference between regulations and the Act of Parliament. So going back then, we saw the main purposes of the Road Traffic and Transportation Act is the first one that we have there, to establish the Transportation Commission of Namibia. So we have a Transportation Commission in Namibia. Purpose of this Transportation Commission is to inquire into and advise the minister on all matters relating to transportation, to make any such recommendations as they seem fit regarding the application of the Act, potential amendments, as well as regulations. That's where I came, what I was saying earlier. If I say the minister makes the regulations, it's not him personally. It is him following advice and recommendations by the experts, including the Transportation Commission. So they must make recommendations, and they advise the minister. The RTTA gives the minister various powers, certain things that he can do. But the minister, being a smart man, is not randomly going to decide to do this or what to do. He will listen and take advice from his advisors, including the Transportation Commission. So that is the purpose of the Transportation Commission. Now, in the beginning of the Traffic and Transportation Act, this Traffic and Transportation Act, in Article 1, Section 1, so the very first section, similar to the SADC protocol, it starts off with many, many pages of definitions. When we spoke about the definitions in the SADC protocol, we discussed the reason why do laws, or in case of the SADC protocol, a contract, a treaty, why are definitions included? Can you remember? Somebody volunteer here. Can you remember what we decided? Why do acts have definitions? Nobody? Can nobody remember what we said? Can nobody remember what we said when we were doing the SADC protocol? Why do laws, why do legal instruments have definitions? If you can't remember, I'll save that question then for your face-to-face test and ask you in that test, because we definitely discussed it. Even when we were doing the SADC protocol, we used the definition of a corridor as an example. I used the definition of a corridor on an example. I can remember what I taught you. Why can't you remember what I taught you? So go and figure out, why do laws have definitions? Now, the RTTA has numerous definitions, many, many, many of them. You do not, I did say you need to download a copy of the Act, you need to have a copy of the Act, but you do not have to study all the definitions. You can restrict yourself to the definitions that I have included in the notes. In the notes, I have also not just copied and pasted the definitions from the Act. I have considerably simplified the wording. It's good enough for my purposes. If you study the way these definitions, the way they are explained in your notes. But you have to know these definitions. They are self-explanatory. I'm not going to sit here and explain to you what roadworthy means. I'm not going to sit here and explain to you what to park means or what owner means. Remember, owner, this is the definition according to the Road Traffic and Transportation Act. You want to know what does the RTTA mean by owner, you have to look in the act, Googling the word owner. So owner is a common English word. Just Googling the word owner is not going to give you the right answer, because laws have definitions so that all users of this legal instrument attach the same meaning to specific words within the context of the act. See, they have just answered that. I'm going to ask you that in the exam again. I hope you were listening. I hope you remembered. So you need to study these definitions. I'm not going to teach them to you. There's no reason to teach them to you. They are in the act. Studying means understanding, being able to put it in your own words, not memorizing it. I definitely don't want you to memorize pages and pages of words. Okay, then with regard to the RTTA, although we pretty much start doing it from the beginning and work towards the end, we do not study each and every provision of the Road Traffic and Transportation Act. When we compiled your syllabus, it wasn't only me, it was a number of people together, decided what was important and selected certain aspects of the act. So we don't do the act right from beginning to end. The first section, okay, we've already looked at the very beginning where it deals with the Transportation Commission, and we've spoken about the definitions. But then early in the act, section 11, so that's quite early in the act, the Road Traffic and Transportation Act deals with the appointment of officers. It speaks of authorized officers. Now, we have all come across these. Your authorized officers are your license inspectors, your traffic officers, your vehicle examiners, and your driving examiners. They are authorized officers. Now, in terms of section 11 of the Act, these authorized officers are appointed by the Minister of Works and Transport. However, the Road Traffic and Transportation Act also authorizes local authorities to appoint authorized officers. The Act lays down certain strict procedures to be followed for the appointment of these authorized officers, including the mandatory provision that they must be issued with a certificate of appointment. The Act further states that in any instance where an authorized officer is performing any official duty, if in the performance of an official duty they are requested by a member of the public to show their certificate of appointment, they have to do so. If they cannot, or if they fail or they cannot, when requested to produce the certificate of appointment, they cannot produce it. Whatever they did is invalid. What that action is invalid. So if you were stopped and arrested by a traffic officer on suspected charges of drunken driving, driving under the influence, and you ask that officer to show their certificate of appointment and they cannot show that certificate of appointment, that arrest is invalid and they have to let you go. Don't please now suddenly become too clever and too wise and go and get into all sorts of trouble and then think you're clever by saying, oh, but show me your certificate of appointment. And if they can't, oh, you must release me also. I'm not teaching this to change you into troublemakers. Did actually happen some years ago that one of my students thought he was very clever. He got away with it because he was correct, but it's still not a good thing to become too wise and too arrogant. But yes, so they issued a certificate of appointment. If they cannot produce this, that act is invalid. Now, quite so many years ago, in 2008, in fact, there was an amendment to Section 11, which has quite far-reaching effects. The amendment to Section 11 stated as follows, that no appointment is invalid only because the officer, the authorized officer, was not issued with a certificate of appointment. And it further states that no function performed is invalid only because he or she cannot produce a certificate of appointment because such certificate was not issued. This particular amendment is no longer, as far as I believe, of that crucial practical importance, but it was at the time when it was promulgated, when the act was appointed. Because what had happened is that some local authorities appointed authorized officers and did not issue them with a certificate of appointment, which then this carried on for a while until suddenly some clever person or his or her lawyer, some wise-ass lawyer, discovered that these people don't have certificates of appointment and immediately set about getting their clients off scot-free. Oh, but that arrest, even though my client was so drunk that he couldn't walk, that arrest was invalid because the traffic officer didn't have a certificate of appointment. So there was a loophole, and some clever people discovered this loophole. In order to close this loophole, they amended Section 11. Practical effect of Section 11 is that although the Act states that they must be issued with a certificate of appointment, if for some reason this does not happen, that does not invalidate the appointment. The appointment still remains valid. Any act performed in the course of their duty will still be valid, despite them not being able to produce such certificate, if the reason why they could not produce the certificate is because it was never issued to them. The appointment and the act performed by them must still be valid in all other respects. So if there are other reasons why it's invalid, then Section 11 will not be relevant. But if an arrest, or no, it doesn't have to be an arrest, any official act is invalid in all respects. The only impediment is that the authorized officer that performed this act could not produce a certificate of appointment because it was never issued to them. The act will still be valid. If, however, the certificate of appointment was issued, it must still be produced. So the section does not invalidate the importance of, or the mandatory provision that they have to produce it if they were issued with it. Please make sure you understand that and you study that. I'm going to ask you that in your test. In addition to that, page 32, paragraph 5 of the study notes discusses the powers, functions, and duties of the various authorized officers. These are pretty much common sense again. These are people that you deal with, that we all know. It's not as if they do some obscure job that we've never heard of. So I'm not going to teach you what a license inspector may do and what a traffic officer may do, or what a driving inspector may or may not do. I can, however, should I want to, ask you this in the test or the exam. So please do make sure that you go through that, and also that you know the difference between licensed inspectors and traffic officers. Okay, so that covers Unit 5. Not overly complicated. Does anybody have any questions? No questions. Okay, please, people, now see there have been some messages about it on your WhatsApp group. Your discussion forum is due on the 14th of September. That's in a week and a half's time. You need to start doing it now. Do not wait until Sunday to do it. Because you also, apart from having to submit your own discussion, you also have to respond. You have to react to at least one other student's. It's a discussion forum by its very nature. You should be discussing it. You must also read what other people have shared and react to it. At least one, preferably more than one. To more than one, you're going to improve your marks. So if everybody is only going to start posting by 11 o'clock on Sunday, it becomes problematic, because what are you going to be reacting on? You have to post your own submission, but also read the others if they are not sufficient, and preferably go back to it in a couple of days' time and see what other people have posted. It is a discussion. A discussion by its very nature means people interacting with itself on e-learning in this particular instance. So please do not leave that to the very last minute. Thank you. Any questions? Any last questions? If not, then have a good day. Next week is recess, so there will be no class next week. If you are traveling, then please stay safe, and I will see you after recess. Bye.